Daf Tzadi Aleph Amid Aleph will begin at Tzadi Amid Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Yehuda Kishetim Selaim L'Divra Mer. If you'll analyze, look into it, and see carefully, you'll conclude that according to Rav Meir, Gagin Rishus Las, only rooftops are considered one Rishus. Therefore, you can carry from one Gag to another, even if it's owned by different people. And Chaseres Rishus Las. And similarly, Chatzeres are also considered to be one Rishus, and you can carry from Chatzer to Chatzer, even if it has different ownership groups. The Gun Yaakov is medayek from Rashi that his Lashon Rashi is Masha that you can carry from Chatzer to Chatzer, even if they're different ownerships, but as long as the nature of the ownership group is the same, meaning it's a private Chatzer and to another Chatzer which is owned privately, or a Chatzer which is owned by several people to another Chatzer which is owned by several people, but not from a private Chatzer to one which is owned in common, or vice versa. So according to Rameir, Gagin Rishus Las, Chaseres Rishus Las, and Karpipas Rishus Las. But Karpipas are also Rishus Las. You can carry from Karpav to Karpav, even if they have the different ownerships. You can carry from Karpav to Karpav even if they have different ownerships. Now, as we'll see from the Gemara Vayter, a Gag and a Chatzer are considered essentially to be one type of use. Now, over here, we don't allow, according to Rav Meir, carrying from a Gag to a Chatzer, even though a Gag to a Chatzer is considered to be one type of usage. And that's because, we said before, the Gzer that was mentioned before, that because we have the different elevations and the different heights, it's a Gzer Mishum Tel B'Rishus HaRabim, that he might come to carry in Rishus HaRabim from the street to a mound, and the mound would be a Rishus HaYachid, and that's carrying from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. Therefore, from a Gag to a Chatzer is Aser. However, from a Gag to a Gag is Mutter. Now, essentially, from a Gag to a Chatzer should also be Mutter, if not for this Gzer. A Karpav to a Karpav is Mutter. A Chatzer to a Chatzer is Mutter. So what's the Yesod HaDvar? Rav Meir holds from a Gag, he says clearly in the Mishnah, from a Gag to a Gag is Mutter, even though there's different ownerships. Meaning that the ownership is not a criteria, except from houses to houses. A person has his Iker Dira in a house and his Iker usage in a house. Over there we say that over there the ownership makes a difference. A person owns one house is clearly a different domain than a person who owns and lives in a different house. So from house to house would be awesome. But Rameir, by the fact that he's mater Gag to Gag, therefore we see that from the fact he's mater Gag to Gag, it's the ownership, aside from the case of the houses where that's the ikr usage of it. But aside from that, the ownership is not the criteria. But different types of uses are a criteria. So, therefore, a Gag to a Gag is mutter even though there's different ownerships. A Chatzer to a Chatzer is mutter even though they're different ownerships because they're the same use. Now, a Gag to a Chatzer should be mutter because there's the same usage, but because of the Gzera of a Tel B'Rishus HaRabim. But a Gag to a Karpav to a Gag, and Chatzer to a Karpav, all those are also because those are different uses. They have different uses involved, and therefore they're Aser. So Rameir says a Gag to a Gag is mutter, but a Gag to a Karpav and a Karpav to a to a Gag to a Karpav and a Karpav to a Chatzer, etc., that would be Aser. They have different usage, and that would be Aser. So that's according to Rameir. That we say that ownership is not the criteria except from house to house, but use is, and therefore as long as it's in the same use category, a Chatzer to a Chatzer, a Karpav to a Karpav, a Gag to a Gag, it's mutter. L'divrei Chachamim, however, according to the Chachamim, Gagim and Chatzeres Rishus Achas. Gagim and Chatzeres are Rishus Achas. All that is considered to be one Rishus. Now, the Chachamim do not hold of this Gzera of Tel B'Rishus HaRabim, and therefore Gag and Chatzeres is considered to be one, and even if it has different ownerships, it's considered to be one. It has the same usage, and it's mutter. And Karpiva is Rishus Achas, and Karpiva is also similarly from Karpav to Karpav, even though there's different ownerships, also would be mutter. According to the Chachamim, they don't hold of the Gzeira. They don't hold of the Gzeira of a Tel B'Rishus Rabim, so there's no difference between a Gag and a Chatzer. And therefore, Gagin and Chatzer is a Rishus Achas. Now, but the Chachamim hold that from Gagin to Gagim is awesome. They hold from one Gag to another Gag is awesome, because you have a primary use below. They say if you have a one Gag, you have the house is owned by one person below, another Gag is owned by another person below. That ownership of below and that tashmish of below creates a difference on the rooftop above. So you can't take it from rooftop to rooftop. Therefore, it creates an issue. But here they would hold that Gagim and Chatzeres are Rishus Achas when you don't have the rooftop on top of two primary uses. It's only Gag to Gag when you have that on top of a primary use below. But a Gag and a Chatzer, where the Chatzer is not connected to a primary use, it's not part of the house, or you have Karpav to Karpav, there it would be mutter. Now, we can see this from the fact that Rav Shimon says that a Gag and a Karpav and a Chotzer, Gagas, Chotzeres, and Karpifas are all Rishus Achas. Meaning the Rabbanan who argue on that, they disagree with that. And therefore they say that's not all considered one Rishus. So they hold that they're not all Rishus together. A Karpav is considered separate. So Karpavius are mutter with each other, but not with a roof and not with a Chotzer. Now we'll see in the Gemara Weiter that the Brisa says that a Gag and a Chotzer and an Achsadra are Rishus Achas. That's considered a Rishus Achas. It doesn't say Karpav, so that must be the sheet of the Chachamim, not Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon says a Karpav is also Rishus Achas. So therefore you see clearly from the Chachamim that they hold that a Gag and a Chatzer are considered Rishus Achas, and a Chsad Rishus Achas, but a Karpav is considered separate. Now, therefore the Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon, according to Shimon, Kulan Rishus Achas, saying that Rabbi Shimon holds a Gag and a Chatzer and a Karpav are all one Rishus, and you can carry from one to the other, even if they have different ownerships. The Divrei of Shimon, according to Rav Shimon, Kulan Rishus Achas. According to Rav Shimon, these are all considered one Rishus. The Gag, the Chatzer, the Karpav, they're all considered one Rishus. Meaning the Chiddush that he's teaching us is that don't think that they're considered a Rishus only between themselves. A Gag for a Gag, a Gag between a Gag, a Chatzer between a Chatzer, a Karpav between a Karpav. Rather, he's telling that the Pshat of Rav Shimon is that it's all one Rishus. So therefore, from a Gag to a Karpav is mutter, a Karpav to a Chatzer is mutter, it's all one Rishus. Tanya Kavasi de Rav, we have a brisa that supports the view of Rav, that, and Tanya Kavasi de Rav Yehuda. So we have a brisa that supports Rav. Rav said that when you have roofs that are adjoining each other and they have different owners, so Rav said, as opposed to Shmuel, Rav said that mechitzas she'ein nikoras. If you have mechitzas, the walls are not visible. The walls between the houses, we do not say good asik to say that you can carry in the whole around the whole Gag. That according to the Chachamim, that you're limited in each Gag, you're limited to Dalet Amos. Not only can you not carry from Gag to Gag, but even within a Gag, you're limited to Dalet Amos. And Tanya Gaval said to Rav Yehuda, and we have a raya that supports Rav Yehuda that we just said, that Rav Shimon holds that a Gag and a Chatzer and a Karpav are considered all one Rishos. Tanya Kavasi de Rav, we have a raya to Rav. The Brisa says, Kol Gagas Hayir Rishos Achasim. All the Gagas of the year are one Rishos. Also Lahalis or Laharit, but it is also to be mal and to be married min a Gag and Chatzer, umin a Chatzer legag. You can't lower from the Gag to the Chatzer, you can't raise from the Chatzer to the Gag. And so it's clear the Shita of Rameir that holds that the Gagim are one, you can carry from one Gag to the other, but you have the Gzeira of a Tel B'Rishus Rabim, so if there's different elevations you cannot, and therefore You cannot carry from a gag to a chotzer, from a chotzer to a gag. The kelim sheshavse b'chotzer muter l'taltlin b'chotzer. Kelim that began Shabbos in the chotzer, when on the onset of Shabbos they were in a chotzer, you can carry them in the chotzer, even though there's no eruv. Though they're different houses, and even if they did not join in an eruv, but if the kelim started Shabbos in the chotzer, then you can carry throughout the chotzer. Begagin mutul talfim begagin, and they started Shabbos on the rooftops. You can carry on the rooftops. But there can't be a gag that is higher or lower than Yud the Shita Rameir because of the Gzera of Tel B'Shus Rabim, Divrei Rabbi Meir. There's a Shita Rameir. But the Chachamim argue, and they say that each rooftop is a separate rishus. If they have different ownerships, you cannot carry from one to the other. And you can only carry on each individual rooftop only bidal. So we see a clear raya to the shita of Rav that, according to the Chachamim, not only can you not carry from gag to gag, but even on the gag you're limited to daled. Tanik also the Rabbi Yehuda raya to Rabbi Yehuda that learned in Rosh Shimon that they're all rishus achas, and you can carry from a gag to a chotzer, a gag to a chotzer, a kar to a karpa. Amar Rabbi said, when we were learning by Rosh Shimon in the city of Zakaya, when they washed with cold water, they were malin shemen. They used to raise up the oil and aluntis and the towels migag l'gag. They would carry it from one roof to another, migag l'chaser, and from the gag they would lower it to the chaser, michaser l'chaser, michaser l'karpa, karpa v'acher. Until they got to the spring where they would bathe. So you see over here that it's all considered one rishus. They had to avoid carrying the rishus harabim. They had a path that would be able to take them from the houses to the spring where they would bathe, and they had a path that would go through without going to the rishus harabim. Would go from the gag to the chotz, to the karpa, karpa, until they got to the Mayan. So you see that according to Rosh Shimon, it's all rishus achas. It's all considered one rishus, and not only can you carry from gag to gag and chotzer to chotzer, but they're all one rishus, and you can carry from the chotzer to the karpav, etc., gag to the chotzer and the chotzer to the karpav. Omar or Rabbi Yehuda. So we find another proof for this, even though we proved it before. We find another proof for the sheet of Rosh Shimon. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Ma'aseh b'shas sakana. There's a Ma'aseh at the time of sakana. By a malam sefer teir mechatzer legaga megag l'chatzer. And similarly, a similar Ma'aseh, they could not bring the sefer teir, and they had to hide it. There was a shas sakana where the Nachrim were geyser that they were not allowed to learn Torah. So they brought it secretly, and they brought it to the place from the house to the place where they read from the Sefer Torah. And they similar to what we said before. To learn from the Torah. From here you can't bring a raya. This is a shas hasakana. So that, therefore, they were mekel, but you cannot bring a raya that even at normal times and regular times that this would also be mutter. Rabbi Shimon he said these are all considered one rishos. Amarav halacha Rav Shimon. He said that's halacha, but that's only if the people in the chotzer, the residents of the chotzer, did not make an eruv. It's if the people within one chotzer, if they made an eruv, he says you're not allowed to carry from chotzer to chotzer. Well, eruv loy. If they made an eruv, then it's also, then you can't carry. Why is that? Because the gazrina dil also lafuki mani the batim lachatzer. This heter that Rav Shimon said that you can carry from chotzer to chotzer and chotzer to karpav, etc. That's only for kelim that started off in Shabbos, not in the house. A house is a separate rishus. Now, if there's an Eruv where Geyser, the Gazrina Dilma also Lapuki Mani the bottom Lachatzer. If there's an Eruv where Geyser, you might bring Kalim that were started off on Shabbos in the house. There's an Eruv you can bring into the Lachatzer. Now, it might be, therefore, in the Chatzer, and if you can carry Kalim from Chatzer to Chatzer, you might carry this Kali from Chatzer to Chatzer. Now, this Kali you can't carry from Chatzer to Chatzer because this Kali started off in the house. It's considered a Kli of the bias. And even though Chatzeres and Karpifis and Gagan are considered one, but that's only those Rishuyos, not the houses. And if Kalim started in the house, and it during Shabbos was brought into the Chatzer, you might similarly take that Kli to the other Chatzer, to the Karpif and the Gag, which you cannot because that's a Kli of the bias. So therefore, if there is an Eruv, we do not allow you from Chatzer to Chatzer and to Karpif because you might carry the Kli of the bias as well. So that's what Rav said, but Shmuel Omar, he said, no, Bein Eruv, Bein Shlo Eruv. That makes no difference, even if there's an Eruv, V'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that he said, similar to Shmuel, Mi Lachshav, who whispered to you, to Rav, he said, who whispered to you, Rav, that there is such a Gzeira? Mi Lachshav, Bein Eruv, Bein Shlo Eruv. It's mutter, according to Rosh Shimon, whether they joined an Eruv or didn't. Mi Lachshav, who told you that there's this Gzeira, there's this Isser? Bein Eruv, Bein Shlo Eruv, it's mutter. Masav l'Rav Chisda l'Shmuel or l'Rav Yochanan, according to Shmuel Rav Yochanan, who say that there's no difference if there's an Eruv and Eruv. So what will come out? It can come out that you could say that there's two Kalim in the Chaser. One Kali started off Shabbos in the Chaser, so you can carry it. You're allowed to carry Mechaz l'Chaser l'Karpov, according to Shimon. And then you'll have another Kali that started off in Shabbos in the house, and if there's an Eruv, you can bring it into the Chazer in Shabbos, and you'll say that Kali is also the carry from Chazer. So you can end up with two Kalim in the Chazer, one which you're allowed to take from Chazer to Chazer, and the other one which you can't. And that's a very confusing situation, and it could potentially lead to a person being over and carrying the wrong Kali. More says, no, according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Shmuel, they're not concerned about that because Rabbi Shimon letamei d'lo gozer. Because we see that Rabbi Shimon in a similar situation, in a similar scenario, that he is not gozer. It's not, we learned in the Mishnah previously. Amar Rabbi Shimon, what is this compared to? What is this compared to when you have three people that they have dalet amas that they of their tchum, so they're outside the tchum. They did not make it, we're not kind of shisa. They have three people in a row. They each have dalet amas. Their dalet amas overlap, so the one on the side overlaps with the middle overlaps with the one on the other side. So Rav Shimon says that the one on the side can carry with the middle, the one on the other side can carry with the middle, but the ones on the two sides cannot carry with each other. So Rav Shimon says, "Lama hadavar hadaima." What is this case compared to? L'shalosh chatzeres psuchos zu l'zu upsuchos l'shus harabim. If you have three chatzeres, they're all open to each other. Now they all open directly into the reshus harabim, so it's not like one has a right of way over the other one that should answer them. They all three chatzeres, they all open, but they open to each other. So if you have that type of case, and there are and each one on the side made an Eruv with the middle. This one also made an Eruv in the middle. They all made an Eruv with the middle one. The middle one is mutter with the ones on the side. And the ones on the side are mutter with the middle one. But the two ones on the side are also with each other. Now, and we're not geyser that, well, if you have kalim in the middle, so if you have kalim that were from this chotzer and are in the middle, they're allowed to carry, they made an Eruv, they're allowed to carry with each other. But the kalim that were from this chotzer, you can't carry to that chotzer. Now, we're not afraid that there's kalim over here. Some kalim were from this chotzer you can carry to this chotzer, but the kalim from this chotzer, which were in the middle one, you can't carry to this one. So it's a similar scenario. You have in the middle chotzer kalim from this side, kalim from that side. The kalim from this side you can carry to that side, but the kalim from this side you can't. And in reverse, the kalim that started off and this chotzer over here that's in the middle, you could carry it back here. The ones that started over here, you cannot carry it over there. So it's a similar scenario over here. So we say over there, Himu Torah Simon, Vehimu Torah Simon, and basically it's under Surzumizu. And we're not geyser that he might take the keli from one chotzer to the other chotzer. So so here also we are not geyser. We're not geyser in this case either.